Baiklah hadirin sekalian dan juga tentunya para peserta yang selalu bersemangat untuk mendapatkan informasi baru, pengetahuan baru dan juga ide-ide baru lewat Ide Katadata 2020. Dan kali ini kita akan membahas hal yang juga tentunya bisa membuka hati pikiran kita dan juga mungkin bisa memberikan ide yang baru bagi kita. Karena kita mau ngomongin tentang data privacy in digital era. Kalau data memegang kunci dan mendatangkan banyak manfaat di era digital, pasti kita semuanya sudah tahu. Namun belajar dari kasus Brexit dan hasil pemilu di Amerika Serikat yang memenangkan Presiden Donald Trump tahun 2016, pemanfaatan data harus diimbangi dengan upaya perlindungan dan sistem keamanannya. Ini yang akan menjadi pembahasan kita selanjutnya dan bertemu dengan narasumber yang satu ini. Tapi sebelum kita bertemu dengan narasumbernya dan sebelum kita masuk ke dalam diskusinya, mari kita lihat dulu sebuah tayangan video berikut ini.
Facebook's newest scandal revolves around a data analysis firm called Cambridge Analytica.
When people see the extent of the surveillance, I think they're going to be shocked.
And Carole Cadwalladr, the Observer journalist who helped break the story, are calling for those responsible to be held accountable. She's labelled it one of the tech giant's biggest ever.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our next speaker, Miss Carole Cadwalladr. And also please welcome our moderator for this session, our senior journalist, Mr. Bambang Harymurti.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm sorry. Now I have to drink coffee after lunch. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bambang Harymurti, and we are here very fortunate. We have Madam Carole, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Cadwalladr.
Cadwalladr, okay. I didn't dare to spell it, to pronounce it myself because I know in America they always pronounce my name bang bang. So it's better to leave it to the people who own the name to pronounce it correctly. And talking about name is one of our personal identity. And with the advent of Facebook, Google, and so on, it's no longer valid what the famous poet from her country, Shakespeare, used to say, what is in a name, right? A rose is a rose, whatever you call it. But we are in another age where a novelist, you're also a poet, right?
I've written a novel. I don't think I call myself a poet, but thank you.
Yeah. I think she is a new generation of Shakespeare because name and our personal identity is actually very important. And it is so important that when it is not managed properly, it can cause a very difficult problem. In fact, she mentioned in one of her op-ed that she used to think that democracy is on a very solid ground until she found out that actually some people with the power of platform like Facebook can actually kidnap it and use it for their own benefit. And I think she found out, I think you start writing about Cambridge Analytica in 2016 or 2017, something like that.
2016.
2016. when nobody else in the world, or not many people in the world, understand what does it mean actually, we are just very happy to put our personal identity on any social media, Facebook, even your very personal information there, because we trust that the organization, the platform will keep it secret, will protect it. And then until we suddenly found out that how come in my Facebook or Instagram or any other social media, the ad that I receive is different than my son or my wife or everything. So it is very well targeted. And it's always be an advertisement that we might buy it, you know. So obviously somebody know us quite well. In fact, it's so well that maybe Facebook know me better than my wife. Right, Carole?
Yeah, that's right. That's literally what the science says.
So now, since we are both journalists, and she is a better journalist than mine, and journalist is basically just a glorified version of storyteller, let me give to a better storyteller. Please tell us your story.
Thank you so much, Bam Bam, and thank you so much for having me here. It's really fascinating to be in Indonesia and to be thinking about, I've been spending a lot of time in the last 3 years thinking about the way that data is used with politics and what that means for democracy. And I went this morning to your national monument, and I very much enjoyed the tableaus in there about Indonesia's past, its recent past, military junta and the founding of the democracy. And these things feel very recent here. And it makes me feel, even more so than I felt before, that these are such important topics, and that I think in Britain and we very much took for granted our elections and the safety of our democratic system. And actually what we've discovered is that we can't, and they are not safe. And Facebook and Google and the technology platforms have fundamentally disrupted our understanding of democracy. And right at the heart of it is exactly what Bam Bam was talking about, is this, our pieces, our shadow selves, the bits of information and data that we leave around the internet, and the ways that they have been harvested. And we don't know by who, and we don't know the ways that that is being used. And we don't know who is profiling us. We don't know who is targeting us. We don't know who is paying for those advertisements. It's just that these companies now are black boxes, totally unaccountable to lawmakers, to any lawmakers across the world. And I suppose my job as a storyteller, as you say, has been to go around and to sound that alarm and to tell you that this is a topic which we really all need to be paying attention to. And so thank you very much for being here and listening today, I suppose.
Thank you. I'm sorry to ask you this question since you are from United Kingdom, but you know, like 400 years ago or 500 years ago, in Indonesia we used to be like producing the most important spices in the world, right? But because it grew in our garden, we didn't know the real value of it, right? So you consider it like free goods. But then the Dutch arrived, and they actually know this spice worth is gold. So then the Dutch company called the VOC, a ferry trading company, came to Indonesia. They play us around, make us fight each other, But their main objective is to monopolize the trading of spice. And of course, at that time, your kingdom also flying in the other part of the world, and sometimes they fight each other. So to me, it seemed to me, in the era of information, 500 years ago, we didn't realize that spice is very important and has a very high value. Similar to now, we didn't realize that our personal data, we consider our personal data as free goods, no value. And then we have company, 400 years ago, it's called VOC, and East India company. And VOC, historically, has become, because of this, has become the richest trading company in the world until today, worth about maybe now $800 billion. Even bigger than Google now and Facebook. But we didn't realize, but we give it for free to them. And then they sell it worth like gold and created the Netherlands become a very rich country. There is a whole city called Leiden, which is basically made from this trade, and a whole port in Amsterdam and so on. So now we are back to that level again. But instead of spice, what we have now is 265 million personal data that we take it for granted as a free goods. And here come our new VOC, Google and Facebook. They say, oh, your data is free. I'll give you access to my platform. Just give me your data for free. And they have become the richest company in the world. We don't mind they become richest. What we mind is that who they sell this information to.
I have to say, that is a really brilliant comparison. And no, I think for all sorts of reasons, I think that is absolutely spot on. And I think it's a really helpful way of looking at it, because we are colonial subjects in the empire of Facebook. We are. And it is exactly that we are commodities. They've made us into commodities. And they don't just, that just leads, they're not just becoming rich off the back of it. This is the one distinction I would make, actually. But they're disrupting our free will. You know, we don't know the ways that we are being harvested and manipulated. And we don't know the effects of that. But I think absolutely this idea of predatory, competitive market practices, building monopolies to become, you know, this extraordinarily valuable companies built off our backs, and with this total imbalance of power that goes along with that, I think is a really helpful way of looking at it. And I really hope, actually, the one thing which it seems to me is that gives me a little bit of hope is that you are no longer a colonial country, and the people realized that and took control of your own destiny. And that is exactly what we have to do with these Silicon Valley companies. And that is why it is absolutely on all of us as citizens to realize that and to demand that control back. And at the moment, we are simply powerless. And our governments are the ones who could be standing up to these companies, but at the moment they're not. And that's why I really feel that this movement has to come from the people. It's the people who've got to be waking up to what is happening, putting pressure on the politicians, and making this a really vital issue of our time, because it is. Information is at the heart of everything else. So if we don't have good information, and at the moment we don't, we just have this total pollution of the internet, then every single other subject, the climate crisis and poverty, all of these things we depend upon evidence-based reporting depend upon facts and data. And so we have to fix this problem first, I think.
But you're saying you kind of depend on the government to stand up against them, right? Whoever them is. But the problem is in democracy, our government is elected, right, by us. And the way we elect our leader is based on the information we have, right? And if somebody who controls the information can put their people in government because they can manipulate the information received by us. So their government is basically working for them, no?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is one of the really key problems, is the people we depend upon to legislate and to regulate need these tools. And so they don't want to stop the power of these platforms because their power also depends upon it. And so, for example, we see this really clearly with Donald Trump and the relationship between him and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has refused to ban politicians and political parties from lying on Facebook. And he's also had these dinners with Donald Trump. And Donald Trump's Facebook campaign depends upon lying, spreading these hate and lies. So there we see this very symbiotic relationship. And that has impacts across the world. It doesn't just have an impact for America. What Facebook does affects all of us in all of our elections, all across the world, because politics now takes place on Facebook. We know that.
So how do we prevent that from happening again? What is the solution to this problem?
So as I say, the thing is that we have more power than we think, I think. So the one country in the world which has very tough laws around spreading hate on the internet is Germany. And Germany has very tough laws because it knows what happens when people spread hate unimpeded. And so because of that, it has these really tough laws, and if you spread it on Facebook or Google, you will get fined, you will get prosecuted. And so Facebook actually has this astonishing statistic I heard, which is that 1 in 6 people in the world who moderate Facebook content, so who police it for hate speech, 1 in 6 of them are doing it in the German language on German content. So some of this is just a question of money. If Facebook spent more money on more moderators, policing more content, we would have a better internet. And there is no good reason why we're not seeing that already, apart from profit. So this is, and I think we really have to, Facebook and these big tech companies, they need to be shamed, because this is shameful, that this is profit getting in the way of, really key human values and our safety.
Well, the problem with that solution is, in Germany, they have a very good court, very good law enforcers. But in a country like us, I hate to admit it, sometimes we are even more don't trust our law enforcer than Facebook. That's a problem. So if you have a tough law, we are more afraid of being its abused by whoever in power. So how do we, for countries like us, there are a lot of them in the world, which do not have this high trust on the court system, where shall we go? Who to ask help to? God.
So part of the answer to this, and it's one of the reasons why I kind of have been doing these events in different places, is because part of the reason is we need international solidarity.
Okay.
And the only place actually that can force real change on these companies is America, because these are American companies. So I feel that there is this responsibility for the international press to be listening and hearing what is going on in other parts of the world and bringing these stories, particularly back to America. I think they have responsibility. So that is part of it. And then you can say that part of it is public awareness. So part of it is understanding that you are the product, that you are being used and exploited and manipulated and targeted. And that is a really, really key thing to understand and to spread that. And so I think that the only thing I can say is I think change has to come from the bottom up. And I think it starts actually in places like this. So here you have a group of people who have an understanding of the issues and of the problems. And you're at the vanguard. You really are. There is the mainstream across the world does not understand this and does not realize what is happening. And so there is real responsibility on you to sort of go forth and explain this in your communities and to your friends and whatever, and to really start thinking about these issues. Because I know that there are a lot of very clever people here today who work with data and technology. And so I think the solutions are going to come from these types of people. And I think there are a lot of business people here who understand the benefits and the bonuses and the uses of data. And of course, I think that's crucial. But you really also need to be thinking about the ways that can also be used to manipulate you, to destroy your society, to polarize you, we know we only have to look at some neighboring countries, such as what has happened in Myanmar. And we know that the way that this polarizing, the platforms really, really, stir up these tensions with terrible, terrible outcomes.
Yeah, but you come from England. It's still part of Europe, right? Not yet.
One more day.
Oh.
One more day.
Actually, until tomorrow, it's still part of Europe. So you are still part of GDPR, right?
We are, yes.
Is England still going to be part of GDPR after tomorrow?
Yes, but it's very uncertain. It's very uncertain what will happen. And one of the reasons why these kind of oligarch figures, these millionaires who backed Brexit in the UK, who wanted to take us out of Europe, is because inside Europe we have solidarity. We have been able to stand up to to enforce higher standards, safer cars, cleaner air. And outside of Europe, it's very much the free market is going to be much stronger, and we can see the negative impacts, and I think data might well be part of that. That in America, it is a free-for-all with data. They have none of these protections.
So we are now going to actually draft a new bill on the data protection. And since you are an expert on this, do you think that GDPR is a good model to follow, or do you have any critique of GDPR or any other suggestions?
I certainly am not an expert on the technical detail, but I think that many of the principles enshrined in it seem to be really fundamentally important. And this thinking about data as not as a commodity, not as something to be exploited and harvested, but as a right and as a fundamental human right. Same as all of the other rights that we have enshrined in international law. Our data is part of ourselves, and it's also subject to those rights. And I think it's going to be very interesting because I'm really curious to see what Indonesia will do with its data laws. But one of the things is not just what the laws are, but also how they are applied and what happens next. And that we're just starting to go down that process in Europe. But I really hope that some of the laws that you are going to get will help individuals gain access and insight into what is happening and the ways that these companies are using your data. So, for example, here I see all the scooters switching past Grab and Gojek. And of course, all of these companies, they all have lots and lots of, if you think about what these companies know about your movements, where you've been, all these sorts of things. And so actually being able to get that back from the companies and to understand the ways that they are profiling you, I think that's hopefully maybe part of what happens here.
Well, it's very interesting you are mentioned that personal data as a human right, right? Because you are actually bringing us back in circle into my parents' time of ideological fight. It used to be that those who believe in capitalism believe in free market, right? So everybody can do whatever they want. And those who are on the left, the socialists, they said that, well, you know, you cannot have a free market or fair market if you allow a few people own all the capitals and the rest work as labor. It used to be during your feudal time, capital is land, right? The landlord is the capitalist, and the landless farmer is the laborer, the servant. And then become industrial age, the one who own the money, the capital, the factories, the capitalists, and those who works at the factory is actually the laborer, right? And now, the capital is data. So who accumulate data own the capital, and who actually giving them data for free and accessing a little bit of data is the worker, right? In that sense. So the reason why country like England became democratic, because the laborer, which are high in number, form a union, created a labor party, and then basically balance the power. So between those who own the capital and those who work for the capitalists, at least have a fair relationship. But now, if you use this similarity, you are actually asking all of us who are not manipulating data but just having personal data to have a union. So we can talk to Google, to Facebook, you know. Is that similar?
Well, it is. I mean, it's again, it's another great analogy, Bam Bam, and I think it's exactly right. Is that, and that again is the thing that gives me hope, because we have been through these battles before, and there are exactly that. Unions are being created. So, for example, I think it's in Germany, there is a union of YouTube creators. So all of the people who are making videos on YouTube and creating huge amounts of value for Google, they have suddenly realized exactly this. Well, actually, we're kind of exploited workers, and maybe if we banded together, we would be able to enforce better conditions out of Google and stop them changing their terms of service whenever they think about it.
Yeah, but the worker only have power because they have the power to strike.
Yeah.
For this association of YouTubers, can they do strike effectively also?
It'd be great, wouldn't it, if YouTube went on strike? I'd love it.
So, yeah.
But it is difficult because, of course, because we are living in this world where exactly that, which is we used to have employees with, you know, in one factory with one
union,
with one factory owner, And now, exactly, we are, you know, so you see with like the gig economy, with the drivers from Grab and Gojek and Uber. But there is still, it's just, we're not there yet. But there are some initial cases with Uber where the drivers are coming together and are seeking solidarity and are seeking better terms from the platform. And I think this has to be the next stage forward. And I love this idea that we, the Facebook users, need to band together to form the union of Facebook subjects and demand better conditions out of Facebook. I actually think that's a completely brilliant idea. And the labour movement, essentially, of the 19th century is where we need to be looking at for examples, because, you know, these are equivalent to the coal barons of the 21st century. It is that exploitative, but potentially more dangerous, because, you know, holding the world's democracies in their hands and being totally unaccountable is, you know, that is unfathomable power.
Yeah, but the problem is, you know, you can only have a good strike if you have more than one company competing. So they know that the company suffering from strike will lose out to the company that has no strike. But now what is our alternative to Google or Facebook? Because they are basically have no competition, except maybe if we go to China.
Well, we did see it work, actually. So when Trump came to power, and you know, there was that astonishing days when he announced the Muslim ban in America, and you know, that shocked and terrified people in America, quite rightly, and people did take action. And during that period, there was a delete Uber action, and Lyft, their rival, suddenly, you know, had millions of downloads because Uber was seen as collaborating with Donald Trump. So it is, you know, we do have that, and that's the sort of power of consumers. So I think that even when we think things are monopolies, maybe there are alternatives. Even Google, there are other search engines out there, we just forget about them. And maybe now's the time to start remembering them.
Now this is a tough question for you. The only company who can compete with Google, potentially, is Weibo. If we let the Chinese search engine and WeChat and everything to compete with global in democratic country like Indonesia, do you think it's good for us, or we are actually, instead of having to fight only one dragon, we have to fight two?
Between the devil and the deep blue sea. I mean, these are really difficult, complex problems. But I think in America, what we see happening there is that these American companies have gotten away with so much because they say, well, it's either us or China. So if you don't want China controlling things, then we have to have unlimited power. Now, this is not, there are other solutions.
Okay.
There are other solutions, which is that we could just have a better Facebook. We could have a better Google. You know, being more equitable, being more responsible. That doesn't mean to say that we're just handing all of the power to China. So I think this is false binaries.
So why is powerful entities like European Union could not create its own version of a better Google or a better Facebook? So we can, you know, like in Indonesia it used to be, we can make the fight between British colonial and Dutch colonial.
Well, I mean, we have to, the thing is that it's just, I mean, the really, really difficult thing to remember, I think, is just how recent all of these technologies are and the way that they've accrued such power in such a short time. And maybe... maybe
Must be Google.
Is it the Novichok arriving from Mark Zuckerberg? Hi, Mark. So on the one hand, you can say, well, it's, you know, we've seen companies rise and we've seen them fall. Xerox was once an incredibly powerful company, and we saw that fall. Microsoft, you know, again, it dimmed. So there is that can always happen. But I think one of the best talks I've heard recently on this subject was from an academic who said that we just have to start thinking about this problem differently. And talking about, you know, fake news or disinformation really minimizes what we're seeing. And she said, you know, this is very much, we've got to use the same, this is, like, whilst we have the climate crisis, this is an information crisis. And this is pollution at a global level across our entire information sphere. And she asked the question, is it like the climate crisis? Are we already past the point of inflection where we can return to a place where we deal in facts and evidence? And I think these are really key questions to ask. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't come here 2 weeks ago. Otherwise, you would have gone to National Monument in a swimsuit. Because of flood.
Really?
Yeah. Because we in Jakarta, we just had rainfall that is the highest in 154 years.
Wow.
So...
and do people in here, has the thinking and the changed around the climate crisis? Are people more aware now?
Here is, I want to tell. The problem is the people here, whenever we are flooded, the people would be into two camps. One camp blaming the governor. The other one is blaming the governor haters. And the reason why our society divided into these two camps is because of internet bubble. When we have a nasty campaign or election, people will form associations through WhatsApp group, Facebook group, and everything. And they are only believing the one that they want to believe and refuse any fact they don't want to believe. So it is irony that when we are so connected, we have access to everything, all the information in the world, we are actually become less rational and more emotional. We are no longer interested in truth-seeking, but we love to find we love to Google everything that support our belief and say that the other belief is wrong. So how do you overcome this? I think it's also probably happening during the Brexit time.
Yes,
right?
This is an exact description of what living in Britain has been like for the last 3 years. We are so divided. We live in two completely different realities.
Different planet, right?
Completely different realities. And the level of sort of toxic hatred between the two groups is really terrifying and seems insurmountable. And I think part of it is, as you say, is because we are just inside our different worlds and inside our Facebook or our Twitter bubble or our WhatsApp bubble. We don't interact in the same way. And I think this is such a sort of like key part of it and it's such a key part of what is happening in politics all across the world, because politics used to be about ideas and policies which were discussed in public. And we had a debate about the issues, and then you would have a vote, and people would make up their mind. But it was a discussion, and it was based upon, as you say, upon rationality, and the two sides had to argue with each other. And now the two sides don't really argue with each other. They just, people stay within their camps, and the public sphere has sort of disappeared. And I think, you know, all the signs are that that's only going to get worse. So as bad as we think Facebook is, WhatsApp is even worse. Because that is totally in darkness. Who knows what is being said there? Who knows what misinformation is being spread? And we know that this is the direction of travel, and we know that it's the direction of travel that Facebook wants to go in, because it means it can wash its hands of the problem. It can be like, well, it's encrypted and we have no say over what is being carried, and you wouldn't want us to, so therefore. And, you know, the consequences of this are terrifying, and we know where the world has gone before when this has occurred. And I think that, you know that we can all see that in so many different countries across the world, authoritarianism is on the rise. And we're living with the consequences of it in Britain.
Well, that's a very doomsday theory, but
I'm not here for the laughs, Bam Bam.
But let me play a devil advocate to that.
Okay,
and I'll go back to your country again, since it's quite fun to poke fun at Britain now. Well, you know, you have one very good city called Manchester. And the society are divided between Manchester City and Manchester United. And if I talk to my friend, the Manchester United fans, they say, oh, the citizens are all bad. You know, the Reds is the real Manchester, and vice versa. But so far they have been living together fine. And they still produce two of the best soccer clubs in the world. So maybe we can overcome this. Maybe we can have our love, you know, to a certain belief and still exist in peaceful coexistence with our enemies. Because if you go to the World Economic Forum now, they created this word competition and and cooperation, and they also created frenemy, sometime friend, sometime enemy, right? So maybe we are evolving. And I ask this question because for those who doesn't know, she is famous for her first novel called Family Tree. Family, right? The Family Tree, which is about 3 generations of, can I say it, of dysfunctional family, trying to find its root, but still manages to live as family, right? So maybe the word is a dysfunctional society.
So I think it's a really interesting idea, and I would love it to be true that we can just be in peaceful coexistence with our enemies. But the problem is that there are enemies who just do wish to destroy us. And we are also living with the impacts of that. So we can see that very clearly, for example, in America, in North America and in Europe with Russia. So Russia is actively seeking to destabilize us. And one thing that keeps Manchester City and Manchester united together in peaceful coexistence is because there are strong rules. So, the FA, it has referees, and it has red cards, and it has yellow cards, and you have to play by the rules. Okay. And I think the difficulty that we now face is that actually the rules have been upended. And so, for example, the technology companies have upended our electoral laws. So in Britain, we control spending in elections. That's always been the way. There were limits, and that was it. You couldn't spend any more, and that kept it very fair. And now, because all of the money is spent online, on Facebook and in Google, the rules don't work anymore because nobody knows. So you can just be paying out, all sorts of different people can be paying out money for advertisements. So you can just break the rules really easily. And we know that, for example, the interests who sort of seek to make Europe weaker, to make NATO weaker. We know, for example, that this is one of what Russia wants to do. That it makes the global rules weaker. Together we are strong. You know, NATO is, if you invade one country, you invade all of them, and that sort of maintained the rules. But you weaken that, and I think your idea of peaceful coexistence possibly goes down the pan.
No, actually, you have found a very good answer, which is you need rules and good umpire, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is now we are in a game where there are no rules and no umpire, right?
Exactly, that's the internet.
So it's just like we play, we have a competition, a soccer between Manchester United and Manchester City, and the umpire and linemen are on strike. So that will happen, yeah?
But you know what's kind of crazy is that, and I don't know, it's kind of interesting because I don't know what the legacy of it is here, but one of the things about British colonialism, actually, and the attitudes of that, is that there was this sort of like idea of being a gentleman. So it was just that it was expected that you behaved well. That was a sort of code of conduct. And so things, for example, that Britain doesn't have a written constitution because it's always been understood that we power share. And our electoral laws, for example, they didn't depend upon policing before the election. It just depended upon good faith on you report afterwards because it's a sort of gentleman's agreement. And those are now all broken down. And that's what we're seeing, is that actually when you have people who don't play by the rules, if one side decides not to play by the rules, then the whole system is destroyed. And you know, for a lot of, and that's kind of what we see on the internet, and that's why politicians who are prepared to lie, to break the rules, are, you know, in the
got elected. Yeah. Okay. Anyone want to ask questions here? Yeah, you want to ask? Oh, okay. I think we have the storytelling time is finished. You all now can go to bed, right?
Have a nightmare.
Unless anyone have a burning question. They are already. No?
There's one there.
Is there one? Yeah, we allow one. Okay. Can you come up here so we can see you, because we don't believe anyone in the dark. So come here. Yeah, here.
Over here or over there?
Wherever you fancy.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, thank you.
Okay. Hi. Hi, everybody. My name is Willis. I'm from Event Bank. First of all, thank you for the opportunity. And this question is really related to what Event Bank is doing, because Event Bank is an event management system which is being used especially for this event. And we also follow through with GDPR settings. But the interesting thing about GDPR is a lot of different countries are trying to implement their own system. China is doing their own kind of GDPR. Singapore has PDPA. But the US does not want to implement such rules and regulations. So, going forward, what do you think will happen? Because if we have so many different rules and regulations for different systems, different countries, then there'll be a different factions. So, if, let's say we're going to do an international event 10 years from now, how many rules and regulations should we follow through? Or do you think that sometime in the future, all the global heads and leaders could sit down and discuss a certain system or certain rules and regulation that everybody can agree to? Thank you very much.
So I've got no idea of the answer of
Thank
that.
you.
But I hope,
Okay.
it's a really interesting question. But I mean, and it's sort of, you know, we can only hope that actually that happens. And it has with certain things, for example, with nuclear proliferation. You know, the world eventually decided upon some with chemical weapons. And you can say at some degree, it's not alarmist to say that this is really dangerous technology and it is currently out of control. And so I hope that one day that we could have a global framework which can agree on how to use it safely to protect the rights of individuals. And maybe it does require data to become part of the universal. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was this huge piece of work, I think 70 years ago, which was adopted around the world. And maybe for data, that is something that I hope that one day will come.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's actually the best answer I heard so far. We need to make, in the word of internet, word is Declaration of Human Rights 2.0, which is including the right to protect our personal data. And with that ado, I'm going to give back the floor to the MC. I thank you for your being patient here. Let's give a good applause for Carole. And
Great interviewer, thank you so much. It was
Thank
really
you.
interesting.
And MC, please take over before I stage a coup.